بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيد الأنبياء والمرسلين محمد صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. Tonight, mashallah, is a extremely interesting topic, and if you look at the slide, for those of you who have been coming regularly, you will notice that I've changed the word. Hands up who can tell me what word has been changed.
It went from part 6 to part 7.
MashaAllah, MashaAllah.
Right, we've changed. So for those of you who are regular, you will notice that the word Islam has been changed to Ihsan. That's been that's not a mistake, that's quite deliberate. For those of you who are new, how many are new here? All right. Just a couple of things, inshallah. We will stop for a break for Salat al-Isha. I don't allow during the lecture for questions to be asked, simply because the amount of things we need to get through, it wouldn't allow me to answer every single question. However, at the end, there'll be enough time to answer any questions. So could I request that any questions be left to the end, inshallah, which there'll be enough time. Otherwise, don't feel upset when I ignore you, because I just happen to have the time to go through all the slides and answer all the questions, or ask questions we can at the end. So if there's somebody who comes in late and puts their hand up and I'm ignoring them, the person next to them, just please tell them questions to the end. That way we don't get anybody upset, inshallah. Okay. So again, our question one. How has Ihsan been understood, preserved and transmitted by the vast majority of scholars for the vast majority of our history? This is a historical perspective on an issue that people have various views on. And I've taken the historical approach simply because history is the biggest witness. And how to recognize who is an authority and who is not when it comes to Ihsan. Everyone follows someone's interpretation. But whose interpretation are you following? Are they qualified? What makes them so? And how do we judge? Again, this hadith, the hadith of Jibreel, which I did say that for those of you who come regularly, you will eventually memorize this with probably minimum effort. Alright? So we now know that this famous hadith, which I won't go through in detail because we've done it before. Then we have Islam, which is the 5 pillars. And then we have Iman, which is the belief in Allah, His angels, His books, His messenger of the last day, and in destiny, good and evil. But today's topic will be on this. Ihsan. What is Ihsan? And the Prophet ﷺ mentioned, it is to worship Allah as if you see Him, and if you see Him not, He nevertheless sees you. So Ihsan, that's what I mean. That's what Ihsan is. Okay? So I'm not going to regurgitate that sentence, beautiful sentence by our Prophet. I'm going to refer to this concept, Ihsan, which is excellence. And automatically when I say Ihsan, it means what?
To worship Allah as if you see Him, and
now
if
you've
you
got that,
see Him.
now we know what we're talking about. And the hadith continues to where Umar said, then the visitor left. I waited a long while, and then we found out that the visitor was the angel Gabriel. Hence the hadith, it's called the angel Gabriel, or the Jibreel hadith, as it's usually can be referred to. It was Jibreel who came to teach you your religion. Sahih Muslim. So as a recap, Allah in His wisdom has accomplished this preservation. This deen has been preserved, and hence we'll get from a historical perspective. The verse of Quran, Inna nahnu nazzalna dhikra, Allah says, verily I have revealed this remembrance and I will preserve it. How is this preservation of this deen being maintained? By the scholars who Allah has sent at each level of the religion. So at the level of Islam, the 5 pillars, has been preserved and conveyed to us by the Imams of Sharia, all sacred law. specifically the madhabs and the schools of law. And this is something we've done in several lessons already previously, which you obviously will be very familiar with. The level of Iman, the 6 pillars, and that's the Aqidah, of tenets of faith, specifically the Ash'aris, the Maturidis, and those amongst the Ahl Hadith who do
Tafweed.
Tafweed. Okay. But the next class, Ihsan, to worship Allah as if you see Him, and this has been, the realm of expertise of the Imams of Tazkiyah, spirituality. And the 3 dimensions of our deen that we are very familiar with: Islam, 5 pillars; Iman, the 6 pillars; Ihsan, which is tonight's class, to worship Allah as if you see Him, and if you cannot, then know that He sees you. We know that the fiqh, the 4 madhabs, and again I'm talking about Sunni Islam. Sunni Islam, the vast majority of Muslims are Sunni, so I'm focusing on Sunni Islam specifically. As the fiqh, the 4 madhabs, the Ash'aris, the Maturidis, and the Tafweed of Ahl Hadith. And in Ihsan, the science that is dedicated to reaching this level of worshipping Allah as if you see Him, then if you don't, then He sees you. That science, that subject matter is known historically as Tasawwuf, or in English, Sufism. And this is tonight's class. So, Tasawwuf, Sufism, what do you know? This is where generally I have a list of things. I want to see what you guys know, inshallah. So, please put your hands up. What do you know about this topic? Just hands up.
They usually dancing.
White dancing? Anything else?
I know the message of Qushayri, he was written this book, he was Imam.
Imam al-Qushayri, yes. He was the Imam who wrote a book. Good.
And also, you cannot be high in the way of Sufism unless you are doing what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has mentioned to you follow. And also you
Sharia.
avoid. It's not just like you are going to the Sufism without following, because some wali and the later the wali awliya who maybe sometimes followers of this wali say they are not anymore need to follow.
So what you're
Sharia.
saying is that you have to follow the Sharia.
Yes.
You can't be. Alright, interesting. Anything else?
It's to do with spirituality and Islam.
Spirituality in Islam.
It's where you're trying to get your nafs to a higher level.
What's a nafs then?
Your ego. So inside you've got like it's like your other self, if that makes sense. And
So you have another self, right?
yeah, another self. And
Anybody else have another self? Or just Adam has another self?
and the idea is that if you, like the brother said, if you follow the Sharia and you feed in the soul good food, and you attain a higher level.
Don't spoil it. It's just a trailer. This is just a trailer for the. That's enough.
Basically,
Spoiling everybody. Anybody else?
It's to talk about healing healing the disease of the heart.
Is what, sorry?
Healing the diseases of the heart.
So curing diseases of the heart. What kind of diseases? We talk about
Like
physical disease, like what kind of like medical diseases?
no, like arrogance, pride, jealousy.
So are they diseases?
One could say.
Huh?
Yeah, you could say.
I could say, you could say.
We both could say.
We both could say. Anybody else?
On how to attain the highest level of piety.
How to attain the highest level of piety. Okay. Before I go on, anybody want to add anything? Okay. Bismillah. Well, this is the kind of things that I thought, I may get shouted down for this, but it's the kind of things I thought maybe some of you would mention. Obviously, you are a lot more knowledgeable than I thought you would be, inshallah. But, alhamdulillah. So, nothing. People do bid'ah but now I know that there's such thing as a good bid'ah. And if any questions on that, we've done a whole 3-hour class on it last week, inshallah, so please forgive me if I don't answer too many questions on that, because I lost my voice trying to explain the thing last week. Wearing dervishes in Turkey, yeah? Seen them around? They have strange practices. They do dhikr out loud, or chanting, and they have different groups. Alright? And some may say that they are not in the green, but in the blue circle. And if you have no idea what I'm talking about, then go back and have a look at the previous slides. I'll explain what that actually means. So the questions tonight. Where did the tasawwuf come from? What role does it play in the religion of Islam? And most importantly, what is the command of Allah about it? What does the Sharia of Allah say about this? So ihsan in English can be translated as excellence, and specifically the topic or the science of the subject matter that deals with getting you to worship Allah as if you see Him. Historically, that was known as tasawwuf. So to worship Allah as if you see Him, and if you cannot, know that He sees you, from the hadith. Easier said than done, right? It's a lot more easier to say that than to actually do it. Would you agree? And cannot be achieved through reading a book or hearing a lecture. Unlike fiqh, which you spend a couple of hours and you've got your fard ayn of how to do wudu, how to do salah and zakah, and aqidah, it's even more simpler. Just memorize certain things and explain to you. That isn't the case with this. This is not a weekend or 1 hour lecture and you achieve this state. It's a lot more difficult. This is a lifelong journey and a lifelong ambition. The Prophet ﷺ of his blessed life transformed the Sahaba, the companions, into the best generation that had ever lived. Emphasize the word transformed. They achieved the spiritual state mentioned in the hadith, which is what? Which is?
Worship as you see.
So the Prophet took the Sahaba out of disbelief, took them on the journey, and produced these great men and women who reached this state. Those generations after the Sahaba also achieved this. There's nothing specific to the Sahaba, although they are best. That's in our aqidah. However, it doesn't necessarily mean that after the time of the Sahaba, nobody else could achieve the level of ihsan. No. Anybody can achieve the level of ihsan, just got to do what they did. But easier said than done. So the transformative power of Islam, essentially. Okay? How has this been achieved historically? Again, we're looking at it from a historical perspective. So ihsan, or tazkiyah, which means purification, or tarbiyah, which means disciplining, or tasawwuf, I put all the words up there, so it pretty much covers all the words that you may hear, because people use different words. Reality, call it what you want. The important thing is the spiritual state behind the word. That's what concerns us. How do we reach the level of ihsan? Call it whatever you want. We're not really bothered about what it's called. We are bothered about being what the Prophet ﷺ told us to be. That's what we're concerned of. So all three terms all mean the same thing: to worship Allah as if you see Him. But tasawwuf is the historical term that has been used by the scholars. Again, it's a historical perspective. And everything I'm talking today and mentioning today, you can go back and check it for yourselves. And not just today or last year, somebody invented the term tasawwuf. This historically has been there for centuries. In English, the translation is Sufism. People may use that. Greatly misunderstood in this age due to the ignorance of some who claim to practice it and the ignorance of those who criticize it. So there's two problems. The ignorance of those who claim to practice this. I put claim because they're fake. But also the ignorance of those who criticize. Both of them suffer from the same problem, which is ignorance. So let's first examine tasawwuf from a historical perspective and see what it is and what it does and what scholars have said about it. So tasawwuf, the subject matter talks about ihsan. The science of tasawwuf was not known by that name during the Prophet's time, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But we can say the same thing about hadith terminology. Hadith sahih, hadith mawdu', hadith hasan li-dhatih, da'if, these stuff. There was no such thing at the time of the Prophet of hadith classification. If he said to the Sahaba, if he said to Umar ibn Khattab, what you just said is a hadith sahih, unlucky you. What are you talking about? These things developed over time. Its reality was, namely that of ihsan. So the reality of tasawwuf is ihsan, to worship Allah as if you see Him. Difference of opinion where the name originated from. But like the madhabs and the aqidah schools, it became more developed and systemized into a science that was taught and practiced in all the major Islamic institutes around the world, historically. So the origin of the term tasawwuf, the great historian Ibn Khaldun was a famous scholar, lived many centuries ago, who would travel around the Muslim world and write his travels, what he saw. He's got a book, it's called Muqaddamah, been translated into English, well worth getting and having a look. But in that book, he says this knowledge, in brackets tasawwuf, is a branch of the sciences of sacred law, Sharia, that originated within the Ummah. From the first, the way of such people had also been considered the path of truth and guidance by the early Muslim community, and its notables of the companions of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, those who taught by them and those who came after them. So what he's saying is that it's nothing new. It's nothing new. So what does it consist of? Well, basically, you could say dedication to worship, total dedication to Allah Most High, disregard for the finery and the ornament of the world, the dunya, abstinence, staying away from their pleasures and the wealth and the prestige sought by most men, except for that which is, the bare minimum, and retiring from others to worship Allah alone. So this is the general rule amongst the companions of the Prophet ﷺ. The Sahaba did those things, right? The time of the Prophet, those things were widely practiced. But when involvement in the world became widespread, particularly when Islam spread to different parts of the world, and wealth then came in, more distractions then came to the Muslims, and from the second Islamic century onwards, and people became absorbed in the world, the dunya. And those devoted to worship came known to be called Sufiya, or people of Tasawwuf. Again, this is all from Ibn Khaldun's Al-Muqaddamah, written over several centuries ago. So the idea, very like in fiqh, the madhab developed, in aqidah, the schools of aqidah developed when the need came. In spirituality, when the need arose and the ulama got together and put down or systemized the subject of how do we preserve ihsan, or more specifically, how do you reach ihsan. So the origins of the word, different interpretations, but as for the origin of the word tasawwuf, it may well be from the word Sufi, the person who does tasawwuf. And the earliest mention of either term was by Hassan al-Basri. Who, if you think back, Hassan al-Basri, we've mentioned him before in the classes. Who can tell me where Hassan al-Basri has come up before?
He was one of the great scholars from the Tabi'in.
Anything else?
He lived at the time of Uthman ibn Affan.
Yeah, but that wasn't in the class. I've specifically mentioned him.
One of the closest things to Majority in time, in his time.
No. Well, he may well be, but that's not specific. I can mention that. Nobody remembers where his name came up.
What was it? What was the topic about it?
You tell me. I'm asking you.
We've had so many lectures. Was it on the Sharia?
I've only mentioned him once,
Once.
but it's quite important.
We did it like.
No?
The slide, the other slides.
Huh?
We go to the slides.
Can you have a look through the slides? No. No? I'll leave it to the end. You remember, think. You remember what it is and Bismillah. So Hassan al-Basri, who died 110 years after the Hijrah, is reported to have said, I saw a Sufi circumambulating tawaf around the Kaaba, and I offered him a dirham, but he would not accept it. So that's some of the most earliest reports that we have in which the word Sufi has been mentioned. So we can see that it was a term that was mentioned quite early on in Islam. Alright, that looks familiar. We have in red the 4 Imams. In green we have the 2 schools of Aqidah. And Hassan al-Basri, there he is right there. Obviously, he's been put over here, but obviously it's 110 years. So it's quite, over here. So before the Imam al-Shafi'i and others, it's quite early on. So that term was in use around about there. We're over here. Alright. So what is a Sufi? The best definition of both the Sufi and his way, certainly by one of the most frequently quoted by the masters of this discipline, is from the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, who said, Allah Most High, it's a hadith Qudsi, in which the Prophet is talking and quoting Allah. It's a specific type of hadith category called hadith Qudsi. So the Prophet is saying, I'm quoting Allah, and saying, he who is hostile to a friend of mine, I, Allah, declare war against. And my slave approaches me with nothing more beloved to me than what I have made obligatory upon him or her. And my slave keeps drawing nearer to me with voluntary works until I love him. So pay attention. Allah begins by saying that Allah has a select group of elect believers who Allah calls friends. Alright? Now this is not every single believer. It's not. These are the elect. People who have gone over and above what is demanded of them until Allah calls them a friend. In Arabic that is called wali. Wali, a friend of Allah. So Allah begins by whoever harms or is hostile to one of my friends, Allah says, I wage war against him. That's quite a massive thing, because you're going to hurt a friend of Allah. Allah is going to intervene, and you're in trouble. Massive trouble. Big trouble. But then, the hadith then continues, my slave approaches me with nothing more beloved to me than that which I made obligatory. So what are the things that Allah has made obligatory upon us? Hands up. Muhammad.
5 pillars.
The 5 pillars. So salah. Salah is obligatory. Obligatory means you've got to do. Anything else Allah has made obligatory upon us?
So,
Yep, so
Zakat.
zakat.
6 pillars.
Easy. Trying to unravel it bit by bit. No, I like to spoil us, trailers. Okay. Muhammad, what's obligatory in Islam? Something that hasn't been mentioned.
Not doing the kabbalah.
Oh, mashallah, not doing the kabbalah. Good.
Whatever has been mentioned in the Quran, like respecting parents,
Okay. Alright? So, pay attention, because there are steps. You go from friend of Allah, and the hadith basically is telling you how to befriend God and how God befriends you. This is where it's going. That's why the Prophet mentioned Allah declares war on those people who harm his friends. And then the Prophet tells you how to become his friend. Do you understand that? So the first thing, it's about becoming close to God. How do you become close to God? By doing that which is obligatory. Salah, zakah, fasting, hajj. Staying away from the haram things. Right? And then it goes what? And my slave, Allah says, keeps drawing nearer. In other words, there's still a bit more. So keeps drawing nearer to me with voluntary works until I love him. By voluntary, I mean sunnah. By voluntary, I mean sunnah. What you should begin to notice is that Allah's love comes when? No. When you do voluntary works, which specifically means sunnah, then Allah loves you. You see. If it was that easy, it's hard. Well, this is Allah's love. This is not some boy or some girl, some father or mother, which obviously that's a big thing, but this is Allah's love. It's not cheap. It's not cheap. It's not going to come, you do 5 prayers a day and Allah loves you, no? What we're talking about is a specific type of love, in case people misunderstand. We're talking about a very specific type of love. Allah loves all his creation. Don't get me wrong, but what we're talking about is a specific type of love. A higher level of love. I love you all. Inshallah, you could argue, inshallah. But there's some who you spend more time with, and who, not sure there's a bit of history there. Naturally, there's a bit more of connection there. Same thing you'd argue with Allah, as obviously. So, but the love of Allah's love comes when you do extra acts of worship. Alright? And depending on how much you do there, that's what Allah loves you. You understand the connection? Let's move on. And when I love him, what happened? Look at this transformation. I am his hearing with which he hears, his sight with which he sees, his hand with which he seizes, and his foot with which he walks. That's a transformation. That state did not exist prior. You see, so what Allah is saying is you do the fard, okay, alhamdulillah. You do the extras. You do extra, in which I'm not going to punish you if you didn't do. But if you do the extra, I love you. And when I love you, you become like this. Your hearing which he hears, the sight with which he sees, his hand with which he sees, and his foot with which he walks. So you become godly. Not in a metaphorical, not in a literal sense, obviously, which is interesting. I don't know how they dealt with that. Abdullah, I don't know how they dealt with that particular one. They had to do ta'wil there, obviously. But you become like this. You become godly. You become, in English, in Old English, you become saintly. And, most important, look at this at the end. If he asks me, or she, I will surely give to him. And if he seeks refuge or protection in me, I will surely protect him. That's what's on the plate. That's what's on offer. If you want it. It's not just, it hasn't gone, it's there. The one who gives, Allah, is still there. And you can give. Anybody who wants that, it is there. So that's what a Sufi is. Basically. And that hadith in Bukhari and Fath al-Bari is a famous commentary on Sahih Bukhari. You understand the hadith? Bismillah. So, to clarify, a Sufi, or man of Tasawwuf, is a man of religious learning. First and foremost, we don't have time for ignorant people in this. You can't be ignorant and be a person of spirituality. It doesn't work. Because the hadith says, my slave approaches me with nothing more beloved to me than that which I have made obligatory. And only through learning can you know what the command of Allah or what Allah has made obligatory. Yeah? If you don't have any knowledge, you don't know what Allah has made obligatory, wajib upon you. Which is the first step in gaining God's love, to know that which He has made obligatory upon you. You can't be doing all madness and saying, Allah, God loves me, and you're doing all haram. Doesn't make sense. Alright? And he or she has applied what they knew. They put into practice what they knew, because the hadith says, he not only approaches Allah with the obligatory, but keeps on drawing nearer to me, metaphorically, with voluntary works until I love him. So this is applying what you know. By the way, when I say sunnah, do not think I'm talking about the sunnahs after salah. No. If it was that easy, mashallah. We are, those of you who come in regularly, if you think that, you should be ashamed of yourselves. That's not sunnah. It's sunnah in terms of the sunnah after salah. Or if you think the sunnah is just rak'at before and after salah, that's all the sunnah is to you, then mashallah. And in turn, Allah, is another saying, Allah gives him knowledge of what he did not know. Why? Because the hadith says, and when I love him, I am his hearing, with which he hears, his sight, with which he sees his hand, with which he sees his foot, with which he walks. In other words, because of this transformation that's happened, your hand now won't touch haram. Your mouth won't utter haram. Your eyes will not look at haram. Your feet will not walk towards haram, because you have this protection around you. Okay? Because you have Allah's love. When Allah loves you, there's a protection. If you love somebody, what are you going to do? You will protect them, you will look after them. They are not infallible, ma'asum. That comes in Aqidah. We'll talk about that at a later time, inshallah. Again, this is a metaphor for the consummate awareness of Tawheed, or the unity of Allah, which in the context of human actions, such as hearing, sight, seizing, and walking, consists of realizing the words of the Quran that Allah says, it is He, Allah, who created you and what you do. So the origin of the way of the Sufi lies in the Sunnah. Simple. A person who claims to be a person of Tasawwuf has to be a person of the Sunnah. The sincerity to Allah that it entails was the rule amongst the early Muslims, to whom this was simply a state of being without a name. So obviously the hadith, and doing obligatory and then doing the voluntary, the sunnah, things that are not wajib, they all have to be done with sincerity. Yeah? Otherwise you won't gain the love of Allah. It has to be done with sincerity. Umar ibn Khattab, Abu Bakr, all the Sahaba, they did this. It just wasn't called the name that we call it today, but they all had this. It only became a distinct discipline or subject when the majority of the community, as centuries went by, drifted away and changed from this state. Muslims of subsequent generations required systematic effort to attain it. And because of the change in the Islamic environment after the earliest generations, the discipline by the name of Tasawwuf came to exist. So definitions, this is where maybe you guys read. Abdullah, you want to read?
Ahmad is a group. Nearly 2,000 definitions exist, all of them reducible to sincerity in turning to Allah.
So we come to define Tasawwuf, which is obviously ihsan. There's about 2,000 definitions, and you may be wondering, why are there so many definitions? Well, some of them define it by the results. Some of it does, by the results. Once you gain this high state, there's results of that. There's fruits. So some define it by the fruits. Some define it by the things that you have to do to achieve that level. Different definitions. I will go with this particular one. Habib Umar bin Hafid, who's a living scholar, who's a master of the science of the soul, currently lives in Yemen, somebody I study with. Abdullah.
Sufism is to act with ihsan and to embody the qualities in accordance with the message of Allah and His Messenger. both experientially and with realization.
So Sufism is to act with ihsan, good excellence, okay, and to embody the qualities in accordance with the message of Allah, what's in the Quran and the Messenger, both experientially and with realization. Keep going.
It is to climb the ladder of Islam and Iman until one attains the ranks of nearness to Allah, ma'rifah, and complete love from Allah and for Allah.
Interesting, the ladder of Islam. So, the ladder of Islam, so you climb up. You have your fiqh done, salah, zakah, you know the rules, and you perform it correctly. Your ihsan, your aqeedah is correct. And then you climb up to nearness to God. So the idea that nearness to God cannot be achieved without doing the 5 pillars correctly, and cannot be achieved by not knowing your aqeedah. You can't. How can you climb up to the first floor unless you walk on top of what? The stairs. The stairs to knowing God are through Islam and Iman. Do not allow anybody to tell you anything else. The reason why I say this is because we have people who are not Muslim that like to follow the spiritual aspect of Islam, and in reality they cannot be called people of tasawwuf. Why? Because there's no La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah. So that does not make any sense. It does have excellence in following the messenger, inwardly and outwardly, and to attain the fruits of that by way of love of Allah. Good character. So if you were to put it into a layman's definition, tasawwuf is about giving you good character. Good character. So tasawwuf is essentially good manners. That's what we're looking at. Whoever has more good manners than you has more tasawwuf. Its reality is doing without the world, humility, patience, modesty, fear, mercy, soft-heartedness, gentleness, a collection of excellent characteristics. So it's not about images and outward forms. Is that not a beautiful thing to have? Is that not a beautiful thing to have? Is there anything wrong with having those things? Is there any innovations there? Absolutely not. I'll answer that for you. So that's basically what we want. That's basically what we're trying to give. It's all about gaining good manners, understanding reality, and experiencing through which one reaches a station. So what does the Quran and Hadith say about tasawwuf? Is there anything in the Quran, in the Hadith that actually talks about this? Well, Allah says, Allah has been truly gracious to the believers. Hassan, read.
Allah has been truly gracious to the believers in sending them a messenger from among their own to recite his revelations to them.
Slow down. Let people catch up. Let people catch your breath.
Purify them and save
So
them.
start again. This is the Quran. Even if it's in English, give it its due.
Allah has been truly gracious to the believers in sending them a messenger from among their own to recite his revelations to them, to purify them and to teach them the scripture and remove them before that they were clearly astray.
If you've noticed, I have put something in bold. I've done it on purpose. I've highlighted to purify them. What do you think that means? What do you think that means, to purify them?
It's a concept.
Hands up. Hands up.
To clean
Lincoln.
them of what makes them impure?
Alright. Say that again.
To clean them from what makes them impure?
So we're talking about dirt, physical dirt?
No.
Ah, mashallah. We have the Ash'ari here. Mashallah. So no. So what are you trying to say? That's ta'wil. They'd have to do ta'wil of that, wouldn't they?
From what the hadith before mentioned,
it's probably that the previous ways of human before transformation have human beings in a state which has something either missing or corrupted in their spiritual
okay.
state, which needs fixing.
Right, okay. Anybody from the sisters? Purified? I'm not carrying the flag for the sisters today. Oh, you dropped the flag now.
Oh, no, that's not. Is it to do with purifying the soul, so getting rid of the sin?
So purifying the soul. Anybody want to add anything else? Hassan?
Cleaning the nafs.
Huh?
Cleaning the nafs.
Cleaning the nafs. Okay, interesting. But clearly you can see that purification is not here meant intended literally. In the Quran, Allah says on the Day of Judgment, Yawm al-Qiyamah, Hassan, keep reading.
On a day that neither wealth nor children will be of any benefit, except he who comes to Allah with a sound heart.
So if you turn up on Yawm al-Qiyamah without a sound heart, and we are not talking about physiological, we are talking about the metaphysical or the spiritual heart. If you come to Allah with a corrupt heart, you're in trouble. If you come to Allah with a good heart, you're okay. Is that not important? The state of your hearts, right? If your heart, if you don't look after your heart from a health perspective, you're gonna have problems, you have diseases, right? You have diseases and you end up dying. But there's a spiritual death. If you have diseases in your heart, not that are caused by food or lack of exercise or whatever, or lifestyle, it's because there's certain things you are living in your life or the spiritual aspect, you're poisoning your hearts, and your hearts then become diseased. So Allah is alluding to the preservation of your hearts. And it's an important matter. So important that Allah says, if you come on Yawm al-Qiyamah and your heart is not good, you're in trouble. The only benefit is what? A sound heart. Do you understand that? Bismillah. And in the famous hadith, we've dealt with the verse of the Quran. Let's look at some hadith. The Prophet ﷺ says, Ishaq, with that Ishaq, Bismillah.
Verily in the body there is a piece of flesh. If it is sound, the body is all sound. If it is corrupt, the body is all corrupt. Verily it is the heart.
That's an amazing hadith. It's a piece of flesh. If it is sound, the body is all sound. If it is corrupt, the whole of your body becomes corrupt. It's the heart. It is the heart. Now, we don't have time to go into that, but mashallah. And also, keep going.
Verily Allah does not look at your forms nor your bodies. However, He looks at your hearts.
Amazing. Allah is not interested in your body. Tall, short. No. Know your forms, black, white, Arab, non-Arab, whatever. Allah's not interested in those things. What is Allah interested in?
Your hearts.
So we have verses of the Quran, and there's more. I just don't have time to put them up. There's more. But the central importance of your hearts. How many of you think of your hearts in this past week? Spiritually. Okay. But it's so important that you don't look after it. It could lead to your damnation. Very strong English word. Nobody uses it anymore. In America, Canada use damn, right? It's like a swear word, a cuss word.
Yeah.
And let me just add one more thing here. You could be Muslim and praying and fasting and doing all these outward actions and still be corrupt. You're under no illusion that you could be praying your 5 prayers You could be going to Hajj, you could be doing all these, you could be even doing the greatest acts of worship outwardly and still have a corrupt heart. Why? Because you could be doing it for the wrong reasons. Even if your wudu is correct, your aqeedah is correct, but you could be doing it for the wrong reasons. Was Shaitan not doing things for the wrong reasons? And then did that not lead him to his ruin? You need to ponder on that. Bismillah. So mindful of these commandments, the Islamic scholars, the ulama, have worked out a science, a subject, of analysing the states of the heart and the methods of bringing it into this condition of soundness. So Tasawwuf specifically talk about the soundness of your hearts. In the fullness of time, as we have discussed earlier, this science, this subject, acquired the name Tasawwuf, in English, Sufism. A traditional label for what we might nowadays more intelligibly call Islamic psychology. In Arabic, who are the Arabs here? There's 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, right. The girl, 5, okay. Who's confident in translating psychology into Arabic? Hands up. Who can translate psychology from English to Arabic? Hands up. Ilm al-Nafs. Ilm al-Nafs. Now translate that to English, Khalid. Ilm al-Nafs. The knowledge of yourself. That's interesting, right? I know I've lost some of you here. Psychology, you know what that means, right? If we were to translate it into Arabic, the Arabs would call it ilm al-nafs, which in English means knowledge of oneself. And that's basically another call it in Islam, we have psychology. It's called tasawwuf. The knowledge of oneself, the nafs. The knowledge of one's heart. Is it good or is it bad? How healthy is the heart? The heart is not part, the heart is part of you, it's part of you, right? So Islamic psychology, or tasawwuf, and it's important. How important is this? Therefore, it is of the utmost importance for any believer that he or she should be concerned with the soul and the state of the heart. Anyone disagree with that? All in agreement? Is ijma'? Ijma'. Was that hand up, brother? Was that hand up? No. Alright. Abdullah, keep reading.
Sufism is the knowledge of states of the human soul and heart, through which one recognizes the diseases of the heart, how to replace them and what to replace them with.
So, in a nutshell, Islamic psychology, tasawwuf, ihsan, call it whatever you want, it's important that it's a knowledge of the states of the human soul and heart. Why? Through which one recognizes the diseases of the heart and how to replace them and what to replace them with. The idea that your heart is corrupted, if you don't believe so, you will know by tonight that most of our hearts are corrupted. Recognizing A, that our hearts are diseased, B, what they are diseased with, and C, how to remove them, and lastly, more importantly, what to replace them with. These diseases of our hearts, like arrogance, hatred, envy, jealousy, all these diseases that we all have. Anybody who does not believe they have them, they don't know themselves. Whoever knows themselves knows Allah. Ponder on that, it's quite deep. So I put that in bold so it sticks in your minds. Sufism or tasawwuf is the knowledge of the states of the human soul and heart, through which one recognizes the disease of the heart, how then to replace them, and what to replace them with. How to purify the heart from blameworthy traits, from bad characteristics, and replacing it with that which is praiseworthy. Your character, whether good or bad, emanates from the heart. That's how the Muslims have looked at it. You have a good character, good heart. Bad character, bad heart. Evil person, bad heart. Good person, good heart. You get it? Right? Do you understand? Yeah, get that? Give me a shake of the heads. Listen to them. And scholars call this suluk, traveling. Why? Why do they call this a travel, a journey? Just I'm left on the girls, nobody else.
Maybe because it takes time.
Put your hand up, bro.
Well, my bad.
Why is it called traveling?
Is it because everyone has a separate circumstance? So even when you're traveling somewhere, you may take the same path, but the way there won't be the same.
That's true. That's true. More precisely,
See how you respond to certain situations with intentions, without intentions.
oh, that's good. But I'm looking for something a lot more simple. You're both right. A lot more simpler. It's so simple, it's in your face.
It's like going from.
It's
one
like putting
place
your
to
hand
another.
up. Yeah, I don't like doing that, but I've got to. Otherwise, you kill it. You kill the movie, innit? Tell everyone the end of the story. Muhammad.
Is it doing towards attaining Allah's love?
Yeah. And how do you attain God's love? By getting closer to God. Answers in you right there, staring in front of you. You're on the journey. Alright? If you think back to last year, we did a series of classes called The Lives of Man or Woman. If you remember carefully, that in the beginning, when Allah created all the souls, Allah said to the souls, to everybody, every single person that ever existed, am I not your Lord? And we replied,
Yes.
yes. So at that moment, every single soul was in a experiencing ihsan, worshipping God as if they see Him. Now, when our souls then get placed into the womb and we live in this world, that experience, we're trying to recreate that experience because we've forgotten it. And ihsan is about reaching that moment that we all had before, where, yes, Allah, you are Allah, you worshiping Allah as if you see Him. It's about recreating that. But you can't get back to that because the heart are diseased, and you have your nafs, this ego, that because of it the heart becomes more diseased. So you have to have mujahada, a jihad, a struggle against your nafs to purify your heart. Do you understand that? As profound as that is. Today's a very, very profound class. And by doing that, the more you do that, the more you clean your heart, the more you polish your heart, Allah then draws you closer to Him. Because Allah only brings those who are pure closer to Him. Those who are impure, you have no proximity to Allah. Purify yourself, Allah brings you closer. Hence, this journey of worshiping Allah as if you see it, the journey, because at the end, you gain what? Allah's love, like Muhammad said, which is more profound. And essentially, you can't gain Allah's love unless you become closer to God. Do you understand that? Today is a time maybe to write things down because a lot of things are going to be adding that I'm not here. This is a journey to Allah that aims at striving to purify your heart through knowledge and good works. Until you reach ihsan, to worship Allah as if you see Him, which entails Allah's love. Allah loves you and you love Him, which entails loving the Prophet. You know, these two things cannot be separated. Given the importance of the Quran attaches to obtaining a sound heart, we're not surprised to find that the influence of Islamic psychology or tasawwuf has been massive. Zahid, you okay to read? That's a kind of nice, yeah, sure. No ummas, no buts, bismillah.
In the formative first 4 centuries of Islam, the time when the great works of tafsir, hadith, fiqh, aqidah, grammar, and so forth were laid down, the ulama also applied their minds to this problem of a sound heart, al-qalb, al-salam.
Salim.
Salim.
Okay. Uh-huh.
This was
You've got nice voice.
This was first visible when, following the example of the tabi'in, many of the early ascetics, such as Sufyan ibn Uyayna, Sufyan al-Thawri, and Abdullah ibn al-Mubarak, had focused their concerns explicitly on the art of purifying the heart.
So the early generation of Muslims began to really focus on this and began to develop this into a science, into a subject.
The methods they recommended were frequent fasting and night prayer, periodic retreats, and udars.
Which is what? They are the things that we alluded to in the hadith about drawing close to Allah until Allah loves you through doing what? Involuntary acts, recommended acts like this, frequent fasting, night prayer, tahajjud, qiyam al-layl, dhikr, a lot of dhikr with the presence of heart. Ilm al-tasawwuf, the science of Sufism. Keep going. My voice, I don't want to use my voice so I can't answer your questions. Or maybe I should talk so I'll use my voice so I can't answer your questions. No. Keep reading, I might work out what to do.
Came into being to preserve and transmit a particular aspect of the Sharia.
Massively important. Tasawwuf is not something separate to the Sharia. Get that out of your heads. It is the Sharia.
That of ikhlas or sincerity. It was recognized that the sunnah of the Prophet, peace be upon him, was not only words and actions, but also states of being a Muslim must not only say certain things and do certain things, but must also be something.
It's profound. Just take a moment to pause and just ponder on that. A Muslim must not only say certain things. Assalamu alaikum, la ilaha illallah, Muhammad Rasulullah, and do certain things, prayer, fasting, zakah, but must also be something. How do you, I've never thought about that. We have 2 or 3 honest people in the room. Adam's 4, although he put his hand up. That's quite profound. This is an aspect that many people just don't focus on anymore.
Our deen is not, ultimately, a manual of rules which, when meticulously followed, becomes a passport to paradise.
Right? This deen is not a deen of do this and don't do that, and that's it, you go to paradise. If you think it's like that, it's not. To children, explaining it to children, in the beginning, yes, but as you become adults and mature, it's not like that.
Instead, it is a package made of social, intellectual, and spiritual, whose purpose is to cleanse the human heart.
Out of interest, how much of this is new to people? Hands up if this is new. Okay, 3, 4 truthful people in the room. Alright, if we look at the relationship between Islam, Iman, and Ihsan, is there a relationship? Well, yes, there is. The hadith's words, if you remember the hadith, to worship Allah as if you see Him, shows us the interrelation of these 3 fundamentals: Islam, Iman, Ihsan. They both, all 3 are connected. All 3 are connected. The last part of the lecture, I'm going to show you how Ihsan is connected to Islam, and how Islam is connected to Iman. And show you how they are connected, and hopefully things will become more clearer. The how of worship, how do we pray, how do we do zakah, how do we do hajj, is only known through the external prescriptions of Islam, or the fiqh, or Madhab. How are you going to know how to pray if you don't follow a school? Hanafi, Maliki, Shafi'i. How are you going to do, how are you going to do that? How are you going to do your salah, your zakah, your fasting, your hajj, you know, for that particular school? So the how of worship, that when Allah said, when the Prophet says to worship Allah as if you see Him, the how behind that is the madhabs, which is our sharia. The validity of this worship presupposes you have iman. Why are you worshipping Allah if you don't believe in Allah and the Islamic revelation? Without which worship would be empty emotions. So if you pray and you do not believe in God, it's empty. I mean, inshallah, Allah may bestow His mercy, you may take a shahada, I mean. But obviously, if you pray and fast and do all these things, not believing in God, then this kind of defeats the purpose. The whole point of you praying and fasting is for what? To do it for God. Not that God needs it, but it's more for yourself. The words "as if you see Him" in the hadith shows that ihsan implies a human change, for it entails the experience of what, for most of us, is not experienced. Nobody answered this, but how many of you worship God as you see Him? Nobody answered. Just think about yourselves. How many of you are able to do that? So to understand the tasawwuf, we must first look at the nature of this change in relation to both Islam and Iman. Okay, Bismillah. Khalid, you okay to read? Can you see from the... Yeah, positive energy.
At the level of Islam, we said that tasawwuf requires Islam through submission to the rules of sacred law.
Number one, submission to the rules of sacred law. You have to have that first and foremost. Any idea of spirituality without submitting to the Sharia is void, defeats the purpose.
But Islam, for its part, equally requires tasawwuf, and why?
Why? So why does Islam also require tasawwuf? Islam here is the 5 pillars specifically. Again, we're talking about the 5 pillars.
For the very good reason that the Sunnah which Muslims have been commanded to follow is not just the words and actions of the Prophet, peace be upon him, but also his states of the heart, such ikhlas, sincerity, taqwa, God-fearedness, tawakkul, reliance on Allah, rahmah, mercy, tawakkul, tawadu, humility, and so on.
So, Islam, your salah, your zakah, your fast, just general outward acts you do, needs tasawwuf, spirituality. Because how are you going to pray without sincerity? How are you going to pray without fearing God? How are you going to do your acts without reliance on God, without mercy, without humility? All of these things are severely restricted if you don't have this. So your outward actions need tasawwuf to complete them. Do you understand that? Otherwise, your worship will remain incomplete and deficient, like somebody mentioned before. Brendan, Lincoln. Right. Now, human actions, we've done this before. Human actions are not simply divided into 2 shades of morality, right or wrong, but we've got 5. Obligatory. That which is rewarded by Allah in the next life, and whose non-performance is punished. Give me an example of that. Adam?
Prayer.
Prayer. Another example? Brendan?
Lincoln.
Do you know why I call you Brendan? There's a guy who looks exactly like you, and he's from America as well. Canada, sorry.
Hajj?
Hajj, MashaAllah. Muhammad Ali, yeah. Saum, zakat. Okay. Alright, how about this? Whose performance is rewarded, but whose non-performance is not punished. You want to give an example? Hands up. Bismillah.
Sunnah prayer.
Sunnah prayer. Anything else? Anis?
Following just other aspects of the sunnah. Following other aspects of the sunnah.
Yeah, all the answers rolled into one. Alright, Bismillah. Permissible, mubah. All connected with either reward or punishment. If you do it, there's no reward or punishment. If you leave it, there's no reward or punishment. The vast majority of human actions fall into permissibility in the Sharia. Examples? Putting your hand up, yeah? Putting your hand up again, sitting down, standing, moving your eyes, moving your hands. These are all, the vast majority of human actions are permissible. If you look at it as a graph, you know, like that, like called a bell curve or something, GCSE level or like that, right? On this, all the things that you have to do are on this at the bottom, and all the things that you don't have that are haram over here. The vast majority of things are over like that. Offensive, makruh, those whose non-performance is rewarded or whose performance is not punished. A bit more tougher, something which is disliked in the Sharia. Don't make it up if you don't know.
Eating with the phone.
Yeah, eating with your left hand would be makruh, disliked in the Sharia.
Having onions before prayer.
Yep, eating onions before prayer, it's a good one.
Praying in your half schools.
Yep, go to some schools. And haram, though, is that whose non-performance, like salah, whose performance is punished. Yeah. So if you left salah, you're punished. If you do salah, you're rewarded. So if you don't do something haram, you're rewarded. And if you do it, you're punished. Now, those 5 states apply to actions, human actions. But the important thing here, to connect it to what we're talking about, because we are talking about the hearts, right? The human heart can fall into these 5 as well. Your human heart can have things which are obligatory to believe in or to feel, or recommended, or offensive, even haram. Well, such as what? The Quran make it plain for us to see that the human states of the heart come under each of these headings. Yet they are not dealt with in the books of Aqidah or Fiqh. You can't open the book of Fiqh and then see that, okay, I have this particular disease of the heart. You can't open the books of Aqidah and it tells you this or that about the heart. But where do you go to? Well, like the prayer, zakah, or fasting, they are not quantifiable in terms of the specific amount that must be done. But though they are not countable, they are of the utmost importance to every Muslim. Let's look at a few examples. We will take a break there, inshallah. We will pray after Isha. Those of you who need to go and do wudu, we'll give you a few minutes and then we will pray after Isha. Those of you who want to go take a break outside, take some fresh air and come back, please do that, inshallah. About 10 minutes we'll resume the class. Okay, Assalamu alaikum, welcome back. Just a recap, we are dealing with the 3rd aspect of the hadith, which is ihsan. And ihsan is to worship God as if you see Him, and if you can't, know that Allah sees you. And historically, achieving that has been done through a science, a subject, and that subject has been historically called tasawwuf. And the people who do it are people called Sufis, historically. And it's concerned with gaining the spiritual rank of worshipping Allah as if you see Him. But you can't do that until you first do certain things. Alright, which is the heart, which is where Allah looks at, qalbun salim, a sound heart, is that matter which is so important. Allah Yawm al-Qiyamah says that the day in which no wealth, man without banin, no wealth, no children will be of any avail except man Allah biqalbin salim, except the one who comes to Allah with a sound heart. Right? And that's what we're talking about. So what are the states of the heart that we perhaps need to be aware of? What are the things that our hearts need to be like or have? Yeah? Like things which are obligatory. Those 5 aspects, which is obligatory, which is recommended, the heart can be in one of those states. Are we all following? Listen, so the states of the heart, love of Allah. In Surah Al-Baqarah of the Quran, Allah blames those who associate partners to Allah, whom they love as much as they love Allah. Then Allah says, and those who believe are greater in love for Allah. So loving Allah is a state of the heart that we must have. In order for your qalb, your heart, to be sound, which is what Allah is looking at. Allah is not looking at your body or your forms or how big or how tall or what colour you are. He's looking towards the heart. And the hearts must have love of Allah. Not just saying, I love Allah, but no, it's got to be in it. It's got to be there. When you love somebody, yeah, we need that type of love for Allah. Making being a believer conditional upon having greater love for Allah than any other person. Mercy. Something that's massively lacking in the Ummah. And Allah, and the Prophet says in the Hadith, have mercy for those in the earth, so that He who is in the heavens, metaphorically, has mercy upon you. Arham man fil ard yarhamukum man fis sama, metaphorically. Or it could be the angel of Rahmah. Whoever is not merciful to Allah, Allah will show no mercy. Sahih Muslim. So, love of Allah and mercy are things which the hearts must have. You can't be a believer and not have love of Allah. By the very definition of being a believer, you just can't. And mercy, how can you have Rahmat al-Alameen, the Prophet was called, and mercy to the worlds. Tirmidhi relates that the well-authenticated Hasan Hadith, mercy is not taken out of anyone except the damned. The third example, love of each other. The Prophet ﷺ said, by him in whose hand is my soul, metaphorically, none, we're going to do this all the time, none of you shall enter paradise until you believe. And none of you shall believe until you love one another. Not hate one another, not look down on one another. And how many of us do that? How many of us dislike other people, other Muslims? Are jealous of other Muslims? And the worst thing, from my perspective, is you not knowing you have that. That's a greater calamity, as far as I'm concerned. If you know you've got it, at least you know you've got it. There's something wrong with you. But to do it and not know you have it, that's even worse. That's called jahl murakkab, compounded ignorance. Number 4, presence of mind in salah. Abu Dawud relates in the Sunan that Ammar ibn Yasir heard the Prophet ﷺ said, for those of us who just prayed, truly a man or woman leaves and none of his prayer has been recorded for him except a 10th, a 9th, or 8th, or a 7th, or a 6th, or a 5th, a 4th, a 3rd, or half of it. In other words, depending on your presence of mind, your hudur, or khushu', you could argue, how much you are present in your prayer depends on how much is connected to how much reward you get from Allah. So if you think I just bang out 4 rak'at and I say salam and off you go, what does Allah want with you going up and down? Allah does not need you to go up and down. You do not benefit Allah in anything by you doing going up and down. Do you benefit God? No, you don't. He doesn't need you. If no one prayed in the whole world, well, does that decrease Allah's greatness? No. Does that harm Allah's power? No. Harms us. Yeah, harms us. But it's interesting that you can't pick up a book of fiqh or a book of Aqid. The Ash'aris and the Maturidis or the Hanifis and the Malikis don't talk about this, because that's not their speciality. It could be argued. Meaning that none other person's prayer counts for him except that in which he is present in his heart with Allah. Love of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. There's an age, unlike any other age, where people are arguing over loving the Prophet. You've got that nowadays. I mean, people want to talk about bid'ah. I mean, that's a bid'ah. Talking about not loving the Prophet. Whether people say it on their tongues or try, knowingly or unknowingly project an argument that essentially means not living the Prophet. This is an innovation of the haram kind in this age. Bukhari relates in the Sahih that the Prophet said, none of you believes until I am more beloved to him and his father, his son, and all the people. Which for those who at the khutbah at Jamwas, the khutbah was on that, and the week before, for those who were awake at University of Liverpool's khutbah, I mentioned the hadith as well. Adam, you can read, inshallah.
It is plain from these texts that none of the states mentioned where the mercy, love, or presence of heart are quantifiable, for the Sharia cannot specify that one must do 2 units of mercy or have 3 units of presence of mind in the way that the number of rak'ahs of prayer can be specified.
Do you understand that? Huh? Who doesn't understand that? Put your hands up, I can explain it. Alright. So it's clear from those 5 quotes from the Quran and the Hadith, whether it's love or mercy or presence of heart, they're not quantifiable. In other words, the Sharia cannot say to you, listen, do 2 rak'at. Like in Salah, pray Isha 4 rak'at, Dhuhr 4 rak'at, and then you've done your Dhuhr, you've done your Isha, Maghrib 3 rak'at. We can't do an amount of something that gives you love of Allah or mercy. You understand that? Unlike Salah, a certain amount, a certain formula of things you do, you've done it. This is more trickier. You get it? Good. Keep going, Adam.
Yet each of them is personally obligatory for the Muslim.
You can't say love of one another is not obligatory. Obligatory. Love of Allah is recommended. No, it's obligatory. You think you have to.
Let us complete the picture by looking at a few examples of states that are haram or strictly unlawful.
So we've just gone through 5 states that are obligatory. You must have those things. And now we're going to go through the opposite, the haram things, which you don't have. Yes, hypothetically. You should not have these things. Examples of states that are haram or strictly unlawful. Let's go for somebody else who's feeling lucky tonight. That's high.
Fear of anyone besides Allah. Allah Most High says in Surah Al-Baqarah of the Quran, and fulfill my covenant, I will fulfill your covenant, and fear me alone.
Nobody else. Nobody else. Neither your neighbor or dog. Nobody. You should not fear anybody. You should be careful, but not fear. 2 different things. Fear Allah alone.
The last phrase of which, according to Imam Fakhr al-Din al-Razi, establishes that a human being is obliged to fear no one besides Allah Most High. Number 2, despair. Allah Most High says, none despairs of Allah's mercy except the people who disbelieve.
This is a common thing. A lot of Muslims despair. Either because of what's happening around the world, or what's happening in their lives, or maybe what's not happening. People despair. Yes, they despair. And that's haram. You know why it's haram? Because essentially you've forgotten Allah is all merciful. And when you've forgotten that, you despair. How can you despair if God is all merciful, if you believe God is all merciful? By you despairing, you've forgotten that God is more merciful to you than your own mother. Bismillah, Ar-Rahman, Ar-Rahim. But when you despair, you kind of lost that. And you're kind of saying that Allah is no longer merciful. So Allah gets offended at that. Allah is more merciful to you and your own selves. So why are you despairing? What's the despair of? And that leads on to depression.
Indicating the unlawfulness of this inward state by coupling it with the worst human condition possible, that of unbelief. Number 3, arrogance. The Prophet ﷺ said, "No one shall enter paradise who has a particle of arrogance in his heart."
Kibr, arrogance. Whether you are an arrogance of thinking yourself better than somebody else, whether it's because of how you look, how you speak, the course that you may be doing, the country you're from, the nationality you have, where you live, the car you drive, the clothes you wear, whatever it is that you foolishly believe, gives you some level of superiority of somebody else. That's kibr. And no one shall enter Jannah who has a particle, just a little bit of arrogance in his heart.
Number 4, envy. Meaning to wish for another to lose the blessings he enjoys. Abu Dawud relates the Prophet ﷺ said, "Beware of envy, for envy consumes good works as flames consume firewood." Number 5, showing off in acts of worship. Al-Hakim relates with a sahih chain of transmission that the Prophet ﷺ said, "The slightest bit of showing off in good works is as if worshipping others with Allah."
And most people do it not knowing, which doesn't take the guiltiness away, doesn't absolve you. Just because you're ignorant of it doesn't make it better. No. You can go for your whole life being the person who shows off in whatever acts of worship they be doing, and unbeknown to themselves, not knowing it. It's like you're worshiping Allah. Yeah, keep going. My voice is going.
These and similar haram inward states are not found in books of fiqh, jurisprudence, because fiqh can only deal with quantifiable descriptions of rulings. Rather, they are examined in their causes and remedies by the scholars of the inner fiqh of tasawwuf, men such as...
These 5 things, and the ones before, okay? Their cause, what causes you to have them, and the remedies, how to cure them, are dealt by the scholars of the inner fiqh, the inner knowledge of oneself. Not to say that the 4 schools, the imams, didn't know these things, they did. But their focus was outward. The scholars of the inner fiqh, men such as
Imam al-Ghazali in his Ihya al-Din, the reviving of the religious sciences.
Right now, every Wednesday afternoon, those who want to attend, I'll put up a post at the end.
Imam al-Rabbani in his Muktabat letters, al-Suhrawardi in his Awarif al-Ma'arif, the knowledges of the illuminates. Abu Talib al-Maki in Qut al-Qulub, the sustenance of hearts, and similar classic works which discuss and solve hundreds of ethical questions about the inner life.
So these are examples of great works, most of them being translated, that deal with these issues. The heart, the disease of the heart. We don't have time to go into everything. Just I'm trying to tickle your taste buds to give you a taste of what it is that we're actually dealing with. And so these great books look into these things in great more detail.
These are books of Sharia, and their questions are questions of sacred law, of how it is lawful or unlawful for a Muslim to be, and they preserve the part of the prophetic sunnah dealing with states.
So who needs this information? Answer that question. Who needs it? Who needs to know this? All Muslims, yep. Why?
How would you even say that?
Yeah, I would go with that as well. I would definitely go with that as well. But they need to have La ilaha illallah first for it to work. But yeah, to an extent, good character, Would you argue, now I've got you, would you argue that this is a big problem, that we don't have this, that many people are either ignorant of this or not doing this correctly?
I would say yes. I was actually talking to my friend today, and we were talking about politics and voting, and it drifted into how people are not very conscious nowadays. So it's like everyone's on pilot mode.
Yeah.
So people don't really reflect and think anymore.
I would definitely. I think I've used that term in the khutbahs. Muslims are in autopilot. I mentioned this several times. Bismillah. Keep going.
The Quranic verses and authenticated hadiths all point to the fact that a Muslim must not only do certain things and say certain things, but also must be something, must attain certain states of the heart and eliminate others.
So questions. Do we ever fear someone besides Allah? Do we have a particle of arrogance, kibr, in our hearts? And to be more precise, do you see yourself being better than anybody else? If you answer yes to that, you've got some arrogance. Is our love for the Prophet ﷺ greater than our love for any other human being? Do we really have trust in Allah? Complete trust, tawakkul ala Allah. If that is the case, then why do we worry so much about other things that we should not be worrying about because Allah is taking care of them? Things that are not within our control. And even those things which seem to be within our control, we have complete trust in Allah. Obviously, we put our effort in, but ultimately, do we have trust in Allah? Is there the slightest bit of showing off in our good works? The slightest. I think most of us can answer that question. Can we? Those who are awake maybe can. Backbiting. Saying something about somebody, if that he or she were to hear it, they will get upset, even if it is true. Getting angry. Do we feel like we are close to Allah and He is to us? Do we worship Allah as if we see Him? So I put those questions there just to kind of jolt you a little bit into thinking more deeply in an area that is so important that perhaps before today many did not even think of in this detail. Adam mentioned the nafs. This is massively important. Pay attention to this slide. Bismillah. Let's keep going.
Half a minute's reflection will show the Muslim where he stands on these aspects of his deen.
Those questions I just asked you, half a minute's reflection. Referring to those questions.
In classical times, helping Muslims to attain these states was not left to amateurs, but rather delegated to ulama of the heart, the scholars of Islamic tasawwuf.
So in order to remove the haram things, those states we mentioned, and to replace them with the things which should have love, mercy, compassion, that wasn't something left to the amateurs. It was left to the scholars of the heart. Specifically the scholars of tasawwuf, that's their expertise.
For most people, these are not easy transformations to make.
Who agrees with that? MashaAllah, the rest are awliya. The rest of it arrived. Worshipping Allah as if they see Him.
Because of the force of habit, because of the subtlety with which we can deceive ourselves.
Do you understand that part there? We are masters at deceiving ourselves into thinking other things about ourselves, thinking good about ourselves, and thinking bad about everybody else. What is doing that? The nafs.
But most of all, because each of us has an ego, the self, the me, which is called in Arabic al-nafs.
Which is what Adam was mentioning. We have this thing, everybody has a thing called a nafs. Nafs, the ego, has different names. Okay? And this nafs is, Allah says in the Quran,
Verily, the self ever commands to do evil.
so you have this like a beast, a wild animal inside you. It's called a nafs. And that tells you to do things. If you control it, you end up doing good. If you don't control it, you end up doing bad. When you do good, the heart becomes pure. When you do bad because of the nafs, the heart becomes diseased. So the nafs influences the heart, and you end up doing good or bad. That's a relationship. The nafs, you do good, affects the heart, which then affects the body. A lump of flesh, if it is good, the rest of the body is good. If it is corrupt, the rest of the body is corrupt. We have this nafs, this like demon, this like monster inside you that tells you to do things. See, people think shaitan, and that's it. No, shaitan is the weakest. You have enemies, and the scholars will talk about that. You have forces, negative forces acting upon you. The strongest is your nafs, yourself. The enemy within. Shaitan is the weakest. Then you have the dunya, the general world, calling you to do things and so on and so forth, and buy things. And then you have people themselves who are evil around you, maybe calling you to do evil things. All of them are weak. And the most dangerous is the nafs, yourself. That's the enemy that's within you. That's what you can try and battle. Your nafs is the thing that at Fajr time tells you turn over, don't wake up. Your nafs is the thing that tells you don't pray. Your nafs is what tells you don't come to the class today. Your nafs is the thing that tells you how to check that girl out, or check that guy out, or eat that extra piece of cake, or eat whatever, or eat that extra piece of lamb shoulder. Or, you know, inside joke. That's a nafs. It's not shaitan. It's not shaitan at all. And for the vast majority of us, shaitan doesn't do much. It's our own egos that causes most of the problems, most of the time. But don't be deceived. And that's why shaitan says, it's in the Quran, I only called you. Did I force you to do the haram? Did I hold a gun to your head? No. I just said, don't do, or come over here, and you went, and you did it. I didn't force you. So don't blame me today when you're all going to hell. It's not my fault. I just called you. You listened. But who listened? Your nafs. Your nafs. And the more your nafs listens to shaitan, the more it becomes a shaitan, and the shaitan then doesn't do anything, just leaves you. You become a shaitan. And we have many shayateen running around in the cloaks or doing acts that are outwardly Islamic, but they are shayateen. And Allah says in the Quran, verily the self commands the evil. The nafs calls you to do evil. You were not born, initially you are born innocent. As the corruption of the world increases, as you become more in the world, you end up being corrupt. And your nafs becomes corrupt. Massively important. Because between you and ihsan is your nafs. The biggest problem. Alright, interesting. Ishaq, keep reading unless you're bored. You want to Adam can read it if you're something else can read. You okay?
I'm okay, alhamdulillah.
Bismillah.
In our childhood, our parents taught us
I'm gonna throw some light to an aspect that many of you perhaps haven't thought about.
In our childhood, our parents taught us how to behave through praise or blame. And for most of us, this permeated and colored our whole motivation for doing things.
Yeah, your parents say, if you do this, I'll buy you a chocolate or buy you something for Eid. If you don't do this, I'll punish you. When you grow up, yeah, you kind of like reward and punishment. Growing up, yeah, most people that's out there experience. Yes?
Yeah.
No?
But when childhood ends and we come of age in Islam, The religion makes it clear to us, both by the above hadith and by the words of the Prophet ﷺ. The slightest bit of showing off in good works is as if worshipping others with Allah. Therefore, being motivated by what others think is no longer good enough, and that we must change our motives entirely and henceforth be motivated by nothing but desire for Allah Himself.
You understand that? Do you understand the point there? As children, you go to pray because your father, your mother tells you to go and pray. You fast because your parents tell you to fast. As a child, you get away with that. But as soon as you become baligh, you become mature, legally responsible, you cannot continue to be like that. Because why are you praying? My father told me. Why are you wearing hijab? My mother told me. Why are you coming to the class? The imam sent me a WhatsApp message, for example. But you can't go on through life like that, because at what point are you going to switch into gears and do things for Allah instead of doing things for people? Give a good example. Those of you who know me, I've had this example before. There was a young woman who wanted to take her hijab off. And so I said to her, why do you wear the hijab? She said, oh, my mother forced me. Oh, people, if I take it off, people are going to say this and that and this and that. She gave a long list of things. And I stopped her and I said, none of it. None of the things you've mentioned, which is the question is, why are you wearing it? None of it's for Allah. You're wearing hijab for people. And therefore, you could just take it off because you're not doing it for God, you're doing it for people. Same thing with prayer, same thing with other aspects of our deen. When it's not done for Allah, when it's done for somebody else, you can leave it. It tends to be the case. But when it's done for Allah, generally, you don't leave it.
The Islamic revelation thus tells the Muslim that it is obligatory to break his habits of thinking and motivation, but it does not tell him how.
It doesn't tell you how, right? So far, I haven't told you. And I won't tell you because we're not at the time. But I haven't told you how to do these things, how to get rid of these things from your heart, and how to replace them with good things. I haven't done that yet.
For that, he must go to the scholars of these states in accordance with the Quranic imperative. Ask those who know if you know not.
So you have to go to the ulama who deal with this, the ulama of tasawwuf, the scholars of tasawwuf. They're the ones who deal with this, and they're the ones who tell you how to get rid of it. These are doctors. Alright, very important, listener. We've nearly finished, and we'll stop for questions.
There is no doubt that bringing about this change, purifying the Muslims by bringing them to spiritual sincerity, was one of the central duties of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. For Allah says in the Surah Al-Imran of the Quran, Allah has truly blessed the believers, for He has sent them a messenger of themselves who recites His signs to them and purifies them and teaches them the book and the wisdom. It explicitly lists 4 tasks of the prophetic mission. The second of which, yuzakkihim, means precisely to purify them and has no other lexical sense. Now it is plain that this teaching function cannot, as part of an eternal revelation, have ended that. These verses indicate the teaching and transformative role of those who convey the Islamic revelation to Muslims. The choice of the word ittiba, follow, in the verse implies both keeping the company of and following the example of a teacher.
So how do you get rid of these harmful diseases of the heart? And how do you replace them? And how do you recognize you have them? There's a sheikh that you follow, and that sheikh then will help you and teach you and reveal the sicknesses that you have, and then will remove these things by telling you to do certain things that is part of our Sharia, and through which eventually you will be purified. Yuzakkihim. The same with the Prophet ﷺ purified Umar, purified Khalid al-Walid, purified all the Sahaba, took them from kufr into Islam, and the ihsan, that can be done. That can be a sheikh who can replicate what the Prophet did, who's connected back through an unbroken chain of transmission through scholars back to the Prophet, in which that method of purification has been passed down. Inshallah. Bismillah.
This is why in the history of Tasawwuf we find that though there were many methods and schools of thought, these two things never changed: keeping the company of a teacher and following his example. In exactly the same way that the Sahaba were uplifted and purified by keeping the company of the Prophet ﷺ and following his example. Tasawwuf aims to replicate this and purify people, leading to a transformation similar to the Sahaba.
Alright, which is basically okay, keep going, finish.
And this is why the discipline of Tasawwuf has been preserved and transmitted by tariqas or groups of students under a particular master.
So in fiqh, you've got madhabs, right? Are you with me? Okay. In aqidah, you've got what? The three schools, yeah? In spirituality, you've got schools. You've got various schools, and these are called historical tariqas, or paths, or ways. And they all take you to God. They all take you to ihsan. But you have various ways of getting there. Some of them focus on a lot of worship. Some of them focus on eating less. There are various different ways. Right? But they are historical tariqas. And there are different Sufi paths, historical tariqas, or groups of students under a particular master, a sheikh. First, because this was the sunnah of the Prophet in his purifying function described by the Quran. Secondly, Islamic knowledge has never been transmitted by writings alone, but rather from ulama to students, even the Quran itself. Thirdly, the nature of the knowledge in question is of a hal, a state of being, not just knowing, and hence it requires to be taken from a succession of living masters back to the Prophet. For the sheer range and number of the states of the heart required by the revelation effectively makes imitation of the personal example of a teacher the only effective means of transmission. Alright, we'll end on that one, inshallah. Who wants to read that beautiful statement? Bismillah.
Which part?
All of it.
So far, we've spoken about Tasawwuf in respect to Islam as Sharia science necessary to realize the sacred law in one's life, to attain the states of the heart demanded by the Quran and Hadith. This close connection between Sharia and Tasawwuf is expressed by the statement of Imam Malik, founder of the Maliki school.
Pay attention to this sound in orange.
He who practices Tasawwuf without learning sacred law corrupts his faith, while he who learns sacred law without practicing Tasawwuf corrupts himself. Only he who combines the two proves true.
Here's the great Imam Malik, very early on in Islam, who says, if you practice the Tasawwuf, you know, the science of purifying your heart from the diseases and replacing and replenishing your heart with good acts and doing a lot of good acts of worship to become close to Allah. If you do that without the Sharia, it will what? Corrupt your faith. Why? Why does that corrupt your faith? Why would that corrupt your faith? How about from the females? Ladies first, as they say. Why would that corrupt your faith? Would it corrupt? Are you in agreement that this may corrupt your faith?
If you practice the Tasawwuf without Sharia, you don't know your limits. And if you learn sacred law that you don't have Tasawwuf, you become very hard-hearted.
Yeah, so if you're going around, sister, it's all in the heart. Sister, it's all in the heart. Brother, it's all in the heart. And he's not praying. There's no sunnah. He's eating haram. What are you talking about? It's all in the heart. It's rubbish. People say that. But, and this is the problem of the age, you could argue, but if you learn sacred law or anything, and you don't practice the spiritual side of it, then you're going to end up corrupting. Why? Because you have knowledge, I am better than him. Now you have knowledge of different things, I'm better than those people. There may be people sat here who believe themselves better than people who haven't come to these classes before, because now you've learned a few terms, you've learned a few things, and all of a sudden now you think yourself better than somebody else. Well, wasn't Shaitan like that? Didn't Shaitan refuse to bow to Adam because he thought himself better? However, Imam Malik, in his genius, recognized you're going to have both. You're going to have the Sharia, the outward form, know what the speed limits, what you can and can't do, what's expected, so you climb the ladder, and you have the spiritual side, which keeps you in check, which stops you from getting angry because you think yourself better. It amazes me how you have some Muslims today that their Islam is about looking down on other people. Their Islam is criticizing other people, mashallah. Their Islam is no mercy. Their Islam is arrogance, even down to how they pray. It's arrogance. And that's, you have like people in a shaitanic mode where they're literally saying to Allah, I'm not bowing down to him. Why? Because I'm better than him. I'm made out of fire, he's made out of clay. There are people who have a shaitanic understanding of Islam, and what's worse, they don't even know it. Don't know it. They just think that they're the best, and everybody else is Ahl bid'ah or Ahl kufr or whatever. And they're arrogant, and you look at them with arrogance. That's what you see. Allah protect us, forgive them, and remove it from us because we have it, and remove from them. Inshallah, make them better than us. This is why Tasawwuf was taught as part of a traditional curriculum in madrasas across the Muslim world, from Malaysia to Morocco. This is also why many of the greatest Sharia scholars of this ummah have been Sufis, and why until the end of the Islamic Caliphate, not this rubbish we had a few years ago, at the beginning of this century, last century, this was written a long time ago, and there's a mistake there we need to sort out, and the subsequent Western control and cultural dominance of the Muslim lands, there were teachers of Tasawwuf in Islamic institutions of higher learning from Lucknow, India, to Istanbul, Turkey, to Cairo, to Egypt. Inshallah. We'll stop there. Does anybody have any questions on what I've done today? There's a whole load of things I have yet to get into that I will get into next week. Inshallah. Next week I'll finish off this lecture, a little bit remains. We will talk about what the scholars of Islam have said, and we will also talk about some of the criticisms. Some of them are warranted, and some of them are not warranted. We will deal with those as well next week. So if you have any questions, not on those things, because we'll deal with them next week, inshallah.